Malross and Min Gray arrive to the Frontier District, along with the sect of the One, to investigate the whereabouts the apostles sent on a mission to restore it. Malross calls over a devotee to monitor R-Type X, who lays unconscious. Malross and Min Gray prepare to march on along with a small army of the sect, but the moment she took step, Min Gray falls. After rocking out with Gruelsaber's legendary power and going toe-to-toe with an eldritch god, Uneldu, Min Gray feels that she might want to rest, just for a little bit, before falling asleep. And so Malross knew handling this would be on him, which was only right, but he was terrified of what may lie within the district that seeped out of the dimensional tear. It didn't matter though. These were Malross's people he was coming to save, and children of the One, who will bear witness to Malross's courageousness and will see him through it. Malross rallies the sect, and they press on into the frontier, and immediately have to fend off gamma zombies and local vagabonds driven mad by the grand teleslab of madness levitating above. We cut to Malross's hypnotized kin, drunken with madness and under the influence of the mysterious eldritch entity, Yertle, whose mere presence has created a frequency of madness that is slowly corroding Haven's inhabitants. They all writhe, cringe, and gyrate to an unheard drum of lunacy while chanting eldritch babble in order to elevate the corrupted teleslab higher to the sky to increase its effect and reach. Malross's priest, and the first victim of Yertle's magic, leads their endeavor. "Priest Kendrick," Malross shouts. The mad priest turns in response of his calling. Malross identifies the ugly eldritch brands burned into their foreheads, along with their purple glowing irises. Malross warns his enforcers of their situation, and he asks that they attempt to spare their brethren, for they are under a spell. "Only kill if you must," Malross regretfully murmurs. The mad cultists knew no spells they originally didn't know to begin with. However, being of the sect, they were adept life crafters, and nothing was more dangerous than a life crafter who ignored the limits of their own craft. The cultists' appendages begin to morph as their bio-augmentations begin to unfurl. Like out-of-the-body horror film, their flesh peels, pulls, and stretches as they unsheathe blades and erect biotic rifle barrels from their hemorrhaging crevices. Kendrick's right eye pops out of his head as his brow peels back and a mounted cannon settles upon his skull. A disgusting and forbidden method, and further proof of their disconnection from humanity, from the One. Kendrick's eye cannon begins to swell with power in preparation to fire. Malross steps back into his own small army and commands them to attack. The sect of the One push forward slowly and defensively using their own advanced body modifications and clash with the Yertle cult, erupting in biotic warfare. A mad cultist impales a sect devotee with their staff, but the staff is chewed up by the gnashing mandibles protruding from the devotee's abdomen. Many of Malross's body mods for war were odd, but incredibly useful, though savagely despicable. With the swing of their battle rods, their enemies' heads are cracked open and bones knocked loose. A Yertle cultist fires their rifle, but either miss or have them deflected by the fleshy shields mounted on the sect's frontline devotees. Malross supports from behind, praying and bolstering their efforts by tweaking their body parts mid-combat like a mechanic. Malross reaches into the spine of one of his most eldest followers, and one of several he has cloned himself, the only clone capable of this one neat trick. Malross pushes his thumb into its third and eighth vertebrae, causing the clone to let out a thunderous shout that activates the implanted mechanism in all of Malross's servants, mutating their lungs and allowing them to pray to the One without breathing. It was the only way they could keep up with the increasing magnitude of Yertle's magic pulsating throughout the Frontier's District Grand Teleslab and being channeled into the cultists' hands. Hours pass, And as the evenly matched parties endure the skirmish, the mad cultists grow more violent and desperate. The Yurtle cultists become more insane and in turn push their own bodies further beyond it could handle until they no longer resembled the brothers and sisters Malros once knew, instead becoming galloping monstrosities more weapon-like than personal. From this point on, the skirmish escalates into a bloodbath as the cultists make it impossible to spare them without the cost of another's life. Bodies begin to fall. We cut to Malros by the wayside, stealthily running from tent to tent, rummaging through their camp supplies in search of any trace of Malros's research. Malros knew that what was being done with the Grand Teleslab was a perversion of his original work, and it must be stopped at all costs. He bursts through another tent, but immediately finds himself resting on the edge of a sharp dagger plunged into his gut. Malros falls to the feet of his attacker, a mad cultist, who then goes to slash at Malros' throat, ending him for good. But with a great big muscular arm bulging with biotic muscle, Malros grabs his attacker's wrist, then slams them. After a quick wrestling match and struggle, Malros disarms, then plunges their own dagger into his enemy's throat. We cut to the outside. The skirmish between the sect and their ex-allies, now crazy and deformed, reaches its peak of bloodshed as casualties climb until suddenly the sect begin to glow and feel a resurgence of stamina and mental clarity. A blessing from the One in the form of a second wind. This intervention tilts the tide in favor of Malros's most talented priests, young and old, with several well-coordinated maneuvers bolstered by faith and discipline with their skills. The sect of the One killed the remaining cultists. Their enemies were mad beyond the point of return, and it seems that the One would have had it no other way. Members of the sect all look up at the maddening Grand Teleslab still levitating, still disturbing nature, and will continue for as long as it exists. The sect do not possess anything destructive enough to destroy the corrupt construct. We cut to a wounded Malros, continuing his search for the corrupted research. A collection of Malros's ideas that have been twisted and inverted by the mind of a genius tainted by Yurtle's magic. Malros spots them and heads straight for them until suddenly his brain begins to fracture, and what was once up was now down, and what was left was also down. Things begin to make less sense, and what never made sense now were clear as crystal. Malros begins to go mad. Yurtle mad. The mad teleslab begins to affect Malros's sanity. Visions of purple tentacles, millions of teeth, and the eldritch plane pollute his brain. Malros attempts to pray, but instead speaks gibberish to his own hand puppets. Suddenly, a loud thunderous rumble can be heard and felt from the sky above. We cut to Cervantes de Agueja soaring across the sky full speed ahead in her gigantic pirate ship. Bound to the front of her ship was a stolen Grand Teleslab pointing outward. She too was affected by madness, and with a ship full of panicking crewmates, Cervantes kamikazes into the maddening teleslab, colliding into it with meteoric impact. The catastrophic maneuver proved to be incredibly effective, as we see the mad teleslab get demolished and crumble on impact from Cervantes' ship. Haven civilians who were driven to madness begin to experience some clarity and peace in mind, as do the Yurtle cultists. However, severely disfigured from going beyond the limits of their own lifecraft. Malross comes to his senses faster with the aid of his faith, shaking off the confusion. Malross continues toward the corrupted research when suddenly he spots a young, dapper man in a suit looming over the desk while holding the corrupt documents in his hand. Dennis Bateman turns to look at Malross with a bit of anger. Dennis wasn't a fan of cults in general, but was certainly not one for the sect who he felt lacked apathy. Malross tries to reason with the stranger. "I don't know who you are, young man, nor why you would seek those papers, but I ask that you hand them to me now. You have no use for them." Dennis has watched the sect for a while. He knew this research would lead to manipulation of the teleslabs for their own silly religious power grabs. This research needed to be destroyed. Dennis holds his lighter up to the research. Malross shouts for him to wait and reasons with him. Dennis argues that if the creation is so evil, then why not destroy the research completely? Malross rebuttals by explaining the use of the existing research can save decades of study. Dennis doesn't listen and holds the fire closer. Malross was saddened and murmurs to himself, "May the lady forgive us." When suddenly, shots ring out as several biotic rounds fire, zipping through the tent and flying true into the abdomen of Dennis, riddling him with bullets and dropping him to his knees. Standing around the tent are Malross's people, bioweapons drawn and ready. Dennis loses grip of the research and instead holds his wounds as he goes invisible and vanishes from the site. Malross walks over and retrieves the foul documents and stows them away. With the tank's energy depleting, the use for the teleslabs will grow exponentially, and Malross will ensure its safety, starting with the restoration of the frontier. Though Uneldu's tear in the sky spelled an alternative course of doom for their existence, and nothing Gate or Haven Guard could remedy. Malross rushes back to his people to prepare a search for an ex-member of the Emporium, an old friend, Vernali Connell.